Live.
Good afternoon, everyone. Our apologies for the delay to the start of today's session. Now, welcome to episode 4 of our Heroes of Energy series. And we're really excited to be talking about hydrogen and the environment and alternative energy today. One of our guests, Dr. Neale, is unable to make it onto today's call, but we will have Dr. Neale on the 29th. So stay tuned for that. He'll be back and he'll be on. I will be talking about solar energy for the Caribbean. My name is Lawrence Arjun, and joining me today to co-host this session is 12-year-old Tahira from the Belmont Secondary School. In with me in our office studio is Phillip Julian, the Managing Director of Kenesjay Systems and also the founder of Heroes Foundation. But before we tell you a little bit more about our guest, I want to toss over to Tahira, who's going to tell us a little bit about herself and why she's here today.
Thank you, Lawrence. Well, if I was to say a few things about myself, it'd be that I am a lover of all things that can help me and others artistically and physically express ourselves. Also, I am really interested in what's going to happen today with our ever so wonderful guests. First, we have Mr. Phillip Julian. He is the Managing Director of Kenesjay System Limited and NewGen Energy Limited. He is leading the development of Trinidad and Tobago's first green hydrogen production facility. Impressive. Mr. Julien is also the founder of the Heroes Foundation, so I am super excited to interview him.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. So would you like me to say something about what I do at this time, Hero, or are you going to introduce the others at this time?
How about you tell one thing about yourself?
Oh, one thing about myself is I love comic books. I grew up reading them. I grew up learning to read on them. I'm a big superhero fan. And cutting to the end, yeah, one of my heroes is actually the late great Stanley. So there's one thing that not a lot of people know about me.
Perfect. Thank you very much for sharing that with us, Philip. I'll just introduce the two other guests with us today, and we can get into the discussion. So, Misali Maharaj has been at the Environmental Management Authority for approximately 18 years. Now, she currently holds the position of an Environmental Program Officer 3 and is responsible for leading and supervising the Certificate of Environmental Clearance, or CEC unit. Now, that's a really important unit at the EMA. Now, Ms. Maharaj has worked for over 10 years in the oil, gas, and service industries within the laboratory environment, holds a Master of Science degree in Geology from the University of Kentucky and a Bachelor of Science degree in Chemistry and Environmental Science from the South Carolina State University. And our third guest today is Mr. Salvation Yalams. Now, Salvation is 25 years old and is a project coordinator at IAMovement. Now, his journey in the environmental field began when he volunteered in secondary school, which I hope he tells us a bit more about today. Now, fast forward 8 years later, and Salvation is influencing change and playing a strong role in making the environment and the world a much better place for everyone. So welcome again to all of our guests, and let's get right into it. Tahira, you're up to bat.
Oh, what amazing introductions. So, I would like to know, starting with Miss Sally, what do you do, what does your organization do, and why is it important for Trinidad and Tobago? You're muted.
I'm sorry about that, Tahira, and viewers. And Tahira, thank you again for that question. I work at the Environmental Management Authority as an environmental program officer. We at the EMA are actually celebrating our 25th anniversary this year, and we are responsible for coordinating, facilitating, and overseeing execution of our national environmental strategy And we do that through our Environmental Management Act. Now, our mission at the Environmental Management Authority is to act as stewards of Trinidad and Tobago's national natural resources and our environment to meet our current and future human, ecological, and economic needs. Now, in other words, we use our regulatory functions to promote and encourage sustainable development. This we do through our various pieces of legislation, and we have some of those are our water pollution rules, our air pollution rules, our environmentally sensitive areas and environmentally sensitive species rules, our noise pollution control rules. We also have pending our waste management rules, and of course, our certificate of environmental clearance rules. Now, my team that I work with is the actual CEC, or Certificate of Environmental Unit. And we focus really on Certificate of Environmental Clearance applications that come into us. And these are for proposed projects to conduct various activities in our Twin Island state. Now, our role really is to process these applications to make sure that these projects could go forward in an environmentally sound manner. Now, this is across the board. So let's just say, for example, an individual wanted to start a poultry farm, and he wants to, let's just say, rear more than 250 heads of poultry. To even a larger organization, to let's just say the oil and gas industry, who wants to go forward with executing an oil and gas drilling campaign. The CEC unit actually utilizes all of the elements that are under the other pieces of legislation to foster best environmental practices. Now, it is very important to mention that public participation, and this means your voices as young people, right, and your opinions actually play a critical role in this process as well. So our work at the EMA helps in directing our country, Trinidad and Tobago, towards a more sustainable future.
Thank you. That was very informal. Now, Mr. Salvation, I want to hear from you. What do you do? What does your organization do? And why is it important to Trinidad and Tobago?
You're hearing me?
Yeah.
So, hi everyone, as mentioned, my name is Salvation Yalams. I am a project coordinator at IAMovement. I've been there for just under 2 years, and IAMovement is an environmental and social NGO that was formed in 2014 by a group of young, passionate individuals who wanted to see environmental and social change in Trinidad and Tobago. So what do? We engage in community outreach, community rehabilitation, environmental rehabilitation, and generally environmental and social projects throughout Trinidad and Tobago. And as of recent, we've been having regional projects as well. What do I do now? I am the Climate Talk project coordinator, and over the last year and a half, I would have gone into over 100 primary and secondary schools in Trinidad and Tobago, having open forum session discussions about impacts of climate change, what we can do, how it affects us, especially with a unique position as an environment, as a oil-producing nation. We have a very unique role to play in terms of shaping the future of the country when it comes to energy and how that interacts with the environment. So that's primarily my scope of work, Climate Talk. However, we also engage in coastal and just land rehabilitation projects using a grass called vetiver. Vetiver grass is a very, very, very important grass when it comes to just environmental applications on the whole. It could be used as a substitute for retaining walls in areas that face like soil instability. It also helps break down toxins in the ground, absorb heavy metals, and overall just hold soils together and help rehabilitate areas that would have had nutrients that depleted over time. So just to summarize it all, I engage in a lot of environmental and social projects, mainly from a point of view of community empowerment, community outreach, and help building livelihoods and I guess communities that suffer directly from environmental and energy related issues here in Trinidad and Tobago.
That was very nice. Thank you. Mr. Salvation. Is it Kiron or Kiron, Doctor?
Dr. Neale is not only called Tahira today, but
okay, so
Mr. Julian is all up and ready to bat, so.
okay. Mr. Julian, I would like to hear from you. And what do you do? What does your organization do? And why is it important to Trinidad and Tobago?
All right. So thanks for the great introduction, everyone. And yes, so my name is Phillip Julian. I am the managing director of a company called Kenesjay Systems. Kenesjay Systems came into existence about 20 years ago. It was founded by my father, Professor Ken Julien, who was instrumental in setting up the first phase of the energy sector of Trinidad and Tobago. We know of it predominantly through the Point Lisas industrial estate, and he was also involved in the Atlantic LNG. Kenesjay was set up with the fundamental objective of ensuring a sustainable energy sector for Trinidad and Tobago. And when I had the privilege of taking on its leadership role about 2 years ago, it allowed me to work with a lot of bright people, brighter than me, who came together in service of this phase 2 energy chapter that the world is calling energy transition, where we're moving away from the traditional fossil fuel based energy sector to one that is more based in a renewable way. So that led us to develop this other company called NewGen Energy Limited, which, as you correctly said earlier, is destined to be one of the first large-scale hydrogen production facilities located right here in TNT. And why that's a big deal is that it really is the fundamental question that it is in service of answering is, what if we could use the sun, the wind, and the water to help feed the world? Currently, Trinidad and Tobago does that well using the natural gas that we've been blessed with for decades. Now, NewGen Energy is in service of creating another way of getting the hydrogen required to make the ammonia and the methanol that Trinidad and Tobago successfully makes and exports around the world, in part to make fertilizer to help feed the world. And we are working on getting that hydrogen from the use of electricity with water to create clean hydrogen that had no fossil fuel required in its creation. So that, in a nutshell, is essentially what NewGen Energy is about. But fundamentally, much like the other speakers have said, it's very much in that space of ensuring a sustainable space for Trinidad and Tobago's energy sector.
Excellent. I think we heard three different jobs, three different operating areas, but I think the key thread, the common thread that we found through all was sustainability. Sustainability from the EMA, IAMovement, Vetiver, NewGen, and hydrogen, and where we're going. So the majority of our audience are students in secondary school. I'm sure they are very curious to know, how did you get to where you are today from probably when you were at their age? So Phillip, since you've just wrapped up what you do, how would you take us through, how did you get to where you are today?
So I was born and raised in Trinidad and Tobago, went to primary school in St. Augustine, university school. I went to secondary school at Fatima College. And about halfway through that, my parents said, look, let's give them a bit of a broader field, broaden my horizons. So I finished my schooling in England, in the United Kingdom. And then after that, I went to a university in McGill, which is located in Montreal, Canada. And why I chose McGill, apart from the weather being better than England, was that it offered, I was interested in being an engineer. I was kind of interested in being a chemical engineer, but I was really interested in being an environmental engineer. And back then, they did not offer an environmental engineering degree that I could find. So they had a minor in environmental engineering offered at McGill. So I took that. I enjoyed my 4 years at university. I then went to work in Canada for just about 10 years. And then I felt the urge to come back home, really wanting to make a difference. And I came back. I joined the energy sector. I actually joined my dad's company, which had only been in existence for a few years. I was with his company for a couple of years before getting into the public and private sector part of the energy industry. And long story short, it's now been about 20 years that I've been back. I'm just excited to be at the advent of this new chapter of Trinidad and Tobago's energy sector.
Interesting. I like that part about environmental engineering. It's pretty cool. It kind of ties into some of what Sally would have studied as well. So Sally, how did you get to where you are today?
My secondary school journey actually started at Point Fortin College, or what we know now as Point Fortin East Secondary School. And I do know we have some of your young people who are viewing today from the Point Fortin West Secondary. I live right now in Santa Flora, and I do know we also have some of your young people here who are from Superior West Secondary. So I'm saying that to say that, I mean, Point Fortin College, or PFC as it was known back then, wasn't one of the so-called prestigious schools that you hear about, right? And I remembered when I passed, back in those days again, it was common entrance, and I heard that I passed for PFC. I was devastated because, I mean, back then as a child, you're hearing things like, okay, Naparima and St. Joseph Convent are the schools to go to. But I was encouraged as, this is where you were meant to go. And, so I started my journey there. So I pursued both my O levels and my advanced levels there, but for me, it wasn't traditional in terms of just a jump from A levels to university. So I started actually working. I did many things during that time. I started off working actually as a primary school teacher, teach at a private primary school at Point Fortin. I also actually taught evening classes in mathematics at Point Fortin College during that time as well. I also would have started actually working. One of my dreams actually was working. Growing up in Point Fortin, seeing Trinidad in those days, I wanted to work there, and I actually got the opportunity to work just for a couple of months there. From there, I would have gone on to actually do some more work at Petrotrin, and I actually spent about 10 years there. From that point, at about 10 years after, that was about in the year 2000, I actually went abroad to do my undergrad degree, which is what I did at South Carolina State University. I'll tell you some more about that in terms of that journey together as we go along. I would have spent 4 years there doing my undergrad in chemistry, as well as a minor in environmental science. And from there, I would have gone on to the University of Kentucky on a fellowship to actually do my master's degree in geology. And it was also centered a little bit on environmental geochemistry, given my chemistry background. I would have returned to Trinidad and Tobago at the end of that in 2006, and was fortunate to get a job as a chemist in one of our environmental companies here in Trinidad. I spent about a year there, and then I joined the EME. And joining the EME has actually been an experience. I started off as an environmental program officer 1 in our CEC unit. And I would have progressed over the 13 years that I've been there to where I currently am in the position of an environmental program officer 3. And basically overseeing the CEC unit and all our team members who work together in terms of making sure we could actually upheld our legislation, and to make sure that, the people who we serve in terms of our applicants understand what the process is. And that's where that's where I am now, and I thoroughly enjoy it.
Nice. Really interesting story. Big up PFC. I have a lot of cousins from Point Fortin who went to PFC, and they are pretty amazing people too. So, yes, definitely. Salvation, what about you? How did you get to where you are today?
You want to hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, my journey is a bit of combination. I know that the other panelists have a lot of extensive educational background in the field. Mine is a bit of combination of actually like studying and actually application of it, right? So I would have started in primary school, Kiron Anglican. I don't know if anybody here went to Kiron Anglican, but bigger police area Kiron Anglican in Europe. And during my primary school days, I didn't really take much interest till about standard 4, standard 5. I had a cousin who was in the 4-H club, so once in a while I would help them out and things, but I never really took more interest in it on my own. And then moving into secondary school, it wasn't until about Form 3 where I started to get involved more. At Form 3, I had to pick subjects. I started finding out about the clubs in the school, and I found out that we had an environmental club. So I went there and I joined the environmental club. I joined the Young Leaders Club. I joined basically all the clubs that I could find in the school, counseling. I just trying out everything as much as I can in Form 3 because I was told that in Form 3 you're gonna be exposed to everything. So try out as much as you can and pick out which one works for you and which one you like, because that's what you're gonna tend more than likely lean towards moving forward. So in Form 4 was when I really took a more active role in the environmental club, and I eventually became the president. And I would have helped be able to get some recycling bins to the school. And we have a very unique cafeteria. I went to Trinity and Bishops and Steve College East. So I don't know if anybody here is from Bishops or Trinity College East. So yeah, the cafeteria is a very unique cafeteria. It is closed, that air conditioned, and it has like bins around and so on. So we took some initiative to get like recycling bins around because we realized that people were throwing away all the trash in one, but having it separated into like IKEA bins and so on, would be able to have some recycling initiatives going on for the school. After Form 4, Form 5, I kind of moved from the school-based initiative to start to go more community-wide. So once in a while, we would have like a little community drive of like cleanups and so on in Trinity area. Sometimes we just pass around like the mall on a Friday evening because we know a lot of young people used to go to the mall on a Friday or Saturday, and usually they like to lime outside and they would leave some trash and so on. So once in a while we pass there and we do a little cleanup there. And eventually I started to get exposed more and more into cleanup opportunities around the community in Trinity and in St. Augustine where I was living. And then when it was time to apply for university now, I wanted to do engineering, but then I told myself that, well, the reason why I wanted to do engineering, I'm not too sure about, but I like the environment very much. So do I want to do engineering or do I want to do environmental science? And I had like a consultation meeting with one of the staff in UE, and they explained to me applications of environmental science and what you could do with that degree in comparison to engineering degree. So eventually I was like, okay, I still like the engineering, but I feel like my heart is in environmental science. So I'm gonna see if I can find a way to do both of them, because I'm a person who if I can do both, I try to do both as much as I can, right? So I realized that no, you can't do an environmental science degree and still do an engineering degree. So I had to choose one. I ended up choosing the environmental science on like the last day of CAPE after I did like pure maths, and I was like, okay, pure maths was a deciding factor for me. I really like environmental science, and I'm not too sure about the engineering at this point. So fast forward into UV now, I'm studying a major in environmental science and a double major in environmental and natural resource management. And in UV is where I would really be exposed to a lot of teachers and tutors who are practicing in the field. Apart from just teaching and tutoring, they also had projects going on. They would have done research in the field. They would have been connected with so much environmental clubs and organizations around the country and around the world, and they would have involved me as much as they can. And from there, I would have been, again, a lot of experience in not just what I thought was environmental science before, which is like community cleanups, planting trees, that kind of thing. I'm realizing there's a lot much more than just those two facets of environmental science. There's the whole administrative role, there's like a lab component, there's a field component, there is a component that deals with like regulations and policy making. There's a whole lot of careers you could choose from environmental science. So, and then in year 3 now, after one of my field trips, one of my lecturers was talking to us about fields and what you can do with environmental science. If you don't just think of getting into like one field of like a lab work or a tutoring work or a lecturing job or just the ministry, but even think of how you yourself could create a job out of the field, because at the end of the day, you're living in a time where, as a young person, you are one of the most vulnerable and affected by what is going on with the global environmental space right now and how climate change is moving forward and so on. So don't think of it as a job, but think of it as how you are playing your role in making the environment better. Because at the end of the day, after studying a whole degree in environmental science, you want to be able to impact some change, you want to be able to be part of something bigger than you want to be able to make the world a better place, not just for yourself, because you understand that the past generations may not have done the best job at that, but you now have an opportunity to play a key role to kind of help out and shifting the world into a much more sustainable direction. And I would have applied to work in environment in IAMovement, and I ended up getting the job. I didn't know what to expect. So when I went, I was like, I have an environmental science degree, but I don't really know what to expect, So what I obviously I did some research and found out what their projects and so on were like, but I still wasn't too sure how I was going to fit into it because of how practical and how application based they were. Um, After the interview, I came home with a much more clear understanding. There's a lot of room for you to be able to develop your own projects and be able to, if you're in a community that, let's say, faces a lot of flooding, and if we see a way to find a solution to help alleviate that, you have room to be able to develop a solution for that. If you're in a place that faces a lot of deforestation, you have opportunity to develop some kind of solution to be able to handle that. And with that mindset, now I understood that there's a different level that I got now. Where before I thought it was cleanups and planting trees. Then I thought it was okay. Maybe there's like policy making, there's like regulations, there's like other fields that I didn't know about before. And then now I even take it a step further where you could generate your own solution for a problem that you see. There is not that there are infinite problems that we face through the environment, and that means that you should be able to be versatile and dynamic enough to, when you see something that has not been done before as a solution approach, to be able to develop a solution towards that and be able to invest some time into research and content development for like your own projects to be able to answer that problem that you're facing in your community. And also a very key thing with IAMovement is that we are very community based. So we not only try to find solutions for private and individual problems, but we try to also incorporate a community approach to it. So let's say, for example, the Queen Bay area in South was facing a lot of soil erosion and land degradation and so on. And we decided to have like an approach where we're trying to rehabilitate the coastal area by planting some vetiver grass, which is very instrumental in soil retention and soil stabilization in that area, but not just doing it by ourselves, we also involve the community to do so. And so that's how I end up finding myself now in a position where we identify a problem, we look at what are the possible solutions, and we try and get the most sustainable approach that we can be able to handle that problem and moving forward. Now, the last thing I want to say also is that one of the things that brought me where I am is that I don't know if this go-getter is the word, but I'm a person who tries to apply myself. So I would have been involved in a lot of volunteer work from secondary school into university. Anytime I see any beach cleanup, anytime I see any tree planting activity, I want to get on board to help in that. Anytime I see something that I want to contribute to the environment, even if it's not something that is directly beneficial to me in any form, I still try to put myself out there to be able to help out as much as I can. And today, I could see how applying something like that from an individual point of view, I'm able to apply it on a national point of view where I could see a problem nationally in a particular area and I could say, wait, okay, we could put together ourselves here and be able to generate a solution for this problem and apply ourselves to be able to help it. And now we're even moving more, we've been advancing more into like a regional space where there are issues that we face in Trinidad and Tobago that is shared with other islands around the region that we can also help a lending hand from our own experience and our own expertise and how we can help them to solve those problems. And I'm also wearing my Heroes Foundation tee today, so I would have also helped out in a couple of the Heroes Foundation events, having stores, having open forum discussions with students on the environmental impact that they can have. Having an environmental mentality as a student right now is very important. And what are some key roles that you can do as an individual while waiting on like the bigger stakeholders like governments and so on to step in and help you, right? So that's the capsule of everything I've done so far that brought me to where I am today.
I'm a big fan of how in depth you all went. Love that. I love it. So being talking about being more in depth, I would like to know what was one of your biggest challenges along the way and how did you overcome it? Since Miss Sally's story had me caught on, I would like to hear from her first.
All right, so here, remember that I told you all that I had a story for you after my A levels, and I didn't go to university in terms of what you traditionally know you go right after A levels or secondary school. The reason for that is that finances was one of the biggest challenges for my family. My mother was a housewife. My father never really had a permanent job per se. I also had three other siblings. I am the eldest actually in my family. Um, so needless to say, um, I had to find a way in terms of now one of my dreams was getting a university degree. I mean, every young person at that age thinks, okay, that is what you need to do. But as I said, the finances were not there. So I started working. I did, as I told you, some teaching and whatnot in between. I also, in that time, actually did some additional courses, a number of other things. I went back to do evening classes and whatnot. But always keeping in the back of my mind that I wanted to get to university. Back in those days, we did not have the internet as what we have now. We did not have online options in terms of courses you could take online. Um, even degrees and diplomas you could do online now. I didn't have that option. And it ended up being where I became the sole breadwinner for my family. So basically working, paying bills, and now trying to get at least give the opportunities to my siblings in terms of what I didn't have in terms of getting that tertiary level education. So as I said, I did work at least for 10 years at Petrotrin. I worked as a lab.
And how did you overcome this? Miss Sally's story had me.
Sorry. I did work in the lab at Petrotrin for about 10 years. During that time, I mean, I enjoyed the job that I did. It took me into doing things like, for example, looking at an innovative way of using doing enhanced oil recovery through using indigenous microbes and whatnot in your soil. And those are just things that are naturally in the soil to help clean up oil spills. One of my friends told me, you know what, why don't you try in terms of sitting the SATs, which was the entry level exams you needed to get into university abroad. Because again, bear in mind, I am working on the sole breadwinner for my family, and I'm trying to make sure that my siblings go on to do tertiary education as well. And so the option wasn't for me just to leave the job and get into UWI here. So I had to find some other way. I did the SATs and I was lucky. I actually got a full paid scholarship to South Carolina State University. And what that meant, I did not have to actually pay for books or boarding or anything like that. So I actually started my undergrad life really at a much older age than most persons. But I could tell you something. That time I spent actually working helped actually build me in terms of a person and giving me that I mean, you're getting into university. Most of the other younger persons, they feel that they're free from their parents' home. They could do what they want to do. They could party and all these sorts of things. I went there with just my purpose in mind. I actually got an opportunity, and I'm going to take full advantage of it. I did that, and while there at South Carolina State University, there were tremendous opportunities. I mean, I actually got a job on campus with the honors program. I worked directly with the dean of the honors program. Being an older student as well was also I think my role at the honors program there was actually as a role model as well for some of the other younger people who would be coming in. And it was a difficult decision though in terms of leaving the job here, a permanent job at that, and going abroad. My parents as well as my siblings told me, listen, you have done enough. It is time for you to now try to achieve your dreams and to move on. I remember lots of crying took place during that time, but really and truly, it was the support of my siblings and my parents that helped propel me in terms of overcoming that challenge, as well as the other persons along the way that actually helped in terms of keeping me motivated and keeping me moving towards my dream, at least that first level in terms of obtaining that undergrad degree.
Oh my goodness. Hey, that story was so touching. Okay, so next, Mr. Salvation. What was one of your biggest challenges along the way and how did you overcome it?
I can relate to one of the items Miss Sally actually mentioned, which is the SATs. I would have also done the SATs in Form 5 into lower 6. I did get a scholarship, but it was like a 50% scholarship. And my dad just told me, listen, even if I sell everything that I own and commit the rest of my salaries for the rest of my working career, I still can't pay for this tuition for 4 years for you. So it doesn't make sense financially for you to go ahead. So that was my dream to go away to study in FIT was shattered right there. But I ended up going to UGen. I think that one of my biggest challenges for me that I faced coming up. I would have had friends from since secondary school where because I was engaged in a lot of different community and club activities around the school. I always try to get my friends to be involved. Hey guys, come, let's go and do this, let's go and do that. And they'd be like, nah, that's lame. Nah, that's lame. We're trying to like lime during lunchtime and so on. But eventually, what I realized was that like when they saw how much joy I got from those things and how fulfilling it was for me, they naturally gravitated towards that. And that's how I would have been able to overcome that by being the best that I can in those fields. And that's something that I'm still seeing around with people around me, even up to now, where it's a little bit difficult to move away from when you're so comfortable in living an unsustainable life and a life that does not really cater for sustainability, especially when it comes to energy and energy consumption. It's a little bit difficult to start off. But when people understand that on a long term, on a long run, it makes so much more sense. Not only saving more money, but also producing far less pollutants and reducing the impacts on the environment from the negative point of view on the longer run by switching to a more sustainable life. So that's one of the biggest challenges I faced was people's mentality. And one of the biggest ways I overcame that, apart from being the best I can in those fields, was also educating them. So if I had an opportunity to go and participate in an open forum discussion, I would invite them. If I see something cool online that is very informative, I would share it on my platform for people who are following me for all the other things I do to be able to see them as well. And through so doing, I would get once in a while people messaging me, hey, this is really cool. I like this. I didn't even know this existed before. And then from there, I was had conversation. By the time the conversation was done, you would see that they've been able to learn something new that they didn't know before, or they've been open to a whole new world that they weren't aware of before. And that's how I've been able to overcome some of those challenges of people's mentality. I had written a short little note of some of the challenges I have. And next thing I had was lack of resources. I would have mentioned before, money is a big thing, especially when you're trying to cause change on a much bigger scale. Having money to be able to access resources is very important. And so moving into a much more professional field now that I'm working in this environmental field, I'm realizing the importance of resources, even on a small scale as compared to even from a small scale, even in comparison to a bigger scale. Having resources to be able to take up a cleanup of my front of my yard by me doing it by myself to now having it clean up for the entire street requires resources. Planting a tree in my backyard from me just doing it by myself to now saying, guys, this community, we face a lot of flooding due to like deforestation further uphill. How about we plant some plants a little bit further up that will be able to help stabilize the soil and reduce the intensity of the runoff for the community here? We require resources to be able to do something like that. And that's one of the biggest ways to be able to overcome a challenge of, I guess, difficulty in causing environmental changes is having more resources through having primarily finances, but not only finances, because you also need human resources as well, right? Our next challenge that I faced was lack of awareness. I simply did not know. And the more I progressed in life, I realized that, wait, there was more to know. There was more to know. There's always more for me to find out. There's always more for me to be able to learn about. And I realized that more people are like me as well, where if I put them onto something, they know about it, they learn better, they do better. And then when they've been able to overcome that now, moving forward, they realize that, wait, it doesn't stop there. There's more to find out. Then they go on their own now and they research about what can I do, how can I get involved, what can I do on an individual scale to start off. And that by so doing, you realize that lack of awareness is a big challenge that people face as well. Another challenge I have was putting myself out there. A lot of times, especially in the environmental field, people always have the mentality of thinking, it's a big problem, it's just me, I can't have a big impact because it's just me alone. But understanding that if you put yourself out there, you're going to meet people who are just like you. And when you meet people who are just like you, you realize that the power of one becomes the power of two. And before you realize the power of two has now become the power of four. And from 4 to 10, and from 10 to 20, and from 20, it just goes exponentially. So putting yourself out there means that you're going to be interacting with more people who are just like you, or even if they're not like you, you're able to bring up more people to your standard. And from so doing, you're bettering yourself and you're bettering them as well. And those are some of the, I guess, major challenges that I face coming up from where I was before and where I am now, and even moving forward. I try to be better in those fields to be able to just sharpen my own tools and sharpen my own skills and be able to have a much bigger impact to myself and people around me.
Thank you. That was very informative. I hope the viewers thought that was as informative and positive as I thought it was. I'm glad to see somebody with the thought that like be the change you want to see mentality is 60% of the work, you know. Okay. Next, Mr. Julien, what was one of your biggest challenges along the way and how did you overcome it?
I mean, I just have to reinforce what you just said. I've just, over the past few minutes, been so inspired by those stories. I mean, just tremendous power for my fellow speakers to rise up and overcome their own challenges. That kind of stuff just lights me up. So really excited to hear their stories and to learn from them. For me, you know, you just talked about be the change you want to see, and I think one of my biggest challenges that I think many can relate to is the challenge of change. Right? So when as I said, halfway through Fatima, I went to school in England, and I was 14 years old. I had my whole posse of friends here. I was very active in a swim club, and it was tough. It was tough to move from here, my home, to go and study in a school in England. Without my parents, it was just my brother and I. I mean, I'd see my parents regularly during the many breaks that they had. But it was a huge change, a huge adjustment. And I think that's something that you know, I hear a lot of people struggling with. And it was tough. It really was tough. And you know, the one thing that I decided to do was take control of something that I had influence in my life over. And that one thing turned out to be swimming. So, you know, in Trinidad, I don't know if you guys know Trinidad's history. We've always had an above average quality of swimmers here, right? And I consider myself an average swimmer. But boy, when I hit the water in England, I was top 2%. I mean, I guess didn't have much practice swimming compared to coming from
I guess the water here is a lot warmer.
A lot warmer. So man, I was the boss in the water. And what helped? That helped me because it was something that I could control. It was something I was good at. And I think I heard some of the other speakers talk to it. It helped me even more by bringing others along for the ride. So other people, there were many young men and women there who were in similar challenging circumstances of managing change. And in the group that I was with, kind of acting as a bit of a rallying call and say, guys, we may not be known for anything, but we're going to be known for swimming. And we had a water polo team, and we were expected to lose at water polo, but there was this rallying call of we're going to own this and we're going to win. And throughout my time at the school, we just aced it. And it wasn't so much the winning at the water polo, it was kind of taking charge of your own destiny went a huge way in managing the adjustment and the change. So that, I think, in a nutshell, is the secret ingredient that helped me overcome my challenge. And yeah, so that's my story.
I particularly like that story, Philip, because I think it's very applicable to what everybody is experiencing right now with COVID. I mean, the only constant in life is change, and I mean, your story there, the stories that we heard through from I mean, you're really proving and living up to this name, heroes of energy. These challenges, how you all overcame these challenges, really inspirational. And I think I want to reinforce that point that you just made about change being the only constant, and finding that ways to take charge of what you can control, what you have that power to control, and then going forward with it. I mean, the changes are challenging, but it's bringing us opportunities, because all of you all would have gone through your challenges, overcome those challenges, learned so many things that you all have openly shared with us today, and have gone on to do such amazing things in your lives, in your personal lives, and in your careers. So on that note, I want to know, we've just spoken about challenges. What was one of the best experiences that you've had along the way? Sally, that smile, that is a really big smile. How would you take us off with this one?
I have no problem with that, Lawrence. My best experience actually was me beginning to really understand that I am capable of so much more than I thought was possible. And let me just tell you the story. This came at sixth form when I was at PhD, and I was asked to be one of two speakers for the Trinidad National Schools Debating Competition. I mean, I didn't even begin to think that I would have had the ability to go up in front of a large audience and convince them of what I was speaking about, whether it was something they believed in or not. Um, but you know, I had two teachers, Miss Mary Castle and Mr. Carlton, who had us, who strongly believed that I could do this. And they had the faith and they provided the guidance. No, this didn't come just like that. It took a lot of hours after school. It took me going over these things many times at home, having my parents and siblings. Sometimes they got tired of me, you know, just going back through the things that I wanted to get across. And this and all this was done to really help sharpen my public speaking skills. And do you know what? I was actually part of the team that won that Trinidad National Schools Debating Competition that year. And that for me, I mean, it stood out for me and it has helped guided me in terms of all the other things that I've done throughout my career, even up until this point. As I said, even at South Carolina State University, I was called upon to be the master of ceremonies for incoming you know, inductees into the honors program and whatnot. So even going out to other schools, we would do a lot of voluntary work with schools out there. At South Carolina, it's a historically black um, area, and you have a lot of historically black schools in the area. South Carolina actually being an historically black college there as well. We were called upon a lot to go and share our knowledge, help the younger people in um, elementary schools, how in terms of doing their math homework, their language homework. So all that actually, I think, was one of the biggest and best experiences of my personal career.
Nice, nice. Really, really, really insightful. Philip, you want to jump in here? Now, what was one of your best experiences?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll be honest, one of my best working experiences, I'm living it now, right? So, when I had the opportunity to join or rejoin Kenesjay Systems, and have I guess, the wind in the sails of so many exciting ideas and concepts that were generated by people around me, and to be able to take that energy and breathe life into it, into something that can make a meaningful difference in the lives of others. In this particular instance, it's the concept of NewGen energy and greening our petrochemical industry, and living that, and just seeing this, I would say, the outright joy and satisfaction of those around me who believe in making that kind of difference, and seeing their ideas and vision and passion come to life through NewGen. That there's nothing quite like that experience, of seeing those kind of things just come to life, and the excitement it generates. I mean, it's almost infectious. It takes on a life of its own, and virtually everyone who hears or we talk about NewGen, it's like the lights go on and they get it, and seeing them get it just lights me up tremendously. So that has been absolutely one of in my top 3 enjoyable work experiences.
Excellent, excellent. So good to hear that. I mean, I think the whole world is looking on at NewGen to see how that hydrogen project revolutionizes yet again the energy sector in Trinidad and Tobago. So very good that you're feeling that way about it. Salvation, what about you? What was one of your best experiences thus far?
I don't know if I'm allowed to mention a couple because I have a few of them, but I'm gonna speak on them very briefly. I would say the first one that comes to mind was planting vetiver grass, right? So understanding how versatile this vetiver grass is and being able to use one grass to hold soil together, replenish nutrients that would have been depleted before, help break down toxins, and then having handicrafts being made out of the byproduct as a byproduct from the leaves of the grass. To me, that was like almost when Einstein had one of his discoveries. Like I just felt like, wow, this is amazing. This grass is very amazing. But I would say that one of the more personal experience in terms of up there for me was going into schools and engaging with young people, because I knew what it was for me as a student back in high school, back in secondary school, having young people like me coming into school and talk to us about things. It was one thing for me to go and sit down and listen to a professional speak about the experience and talk to us about things and whatever, but I've always felt like it was a lot more relatable when it's a young person just like me, and even more relatable for me when I went back to my alma mater and I had a presentation there where the teachers knew me, my face was on the wall, so everybody was a little bit more familiar with me. And it was a bit more surreal because I felt like I had an opportunity to give back to a place that gave so much to me. And to me, that was like one of the best experiences for me. And this was made possible through the climate talk school tour that we had in IAMovement, that we have every year actually, where we engage with young people. And then after that session in my alma mater now, a student came up to me and she was like, hey, I'm really inspired by what you spoke to us about today, and I wanted to share something with you. And that student actually had she's been collecting snack packs from her class for the entire week. All these snack wraps and so on that they would eat during break time. She would collect it and she would make products out of it. She made like a handbag from it. She made like a small pencil case out of it. And to me, that was so inspiring to see that something as small and insignificant as just connecting garbage, as we call it, from class and then turning it into something really important, so it's something useful to students. And then now I was like, wow, this is really, really amazing, and more people need to hear about this. And to me, that was one of the best experiences for me, because I felt like I was able to not only give back to institution that gave so much to me, but I also have been seeing that it did not stop on me. More people have been inspired even after I left the school, and they've been able to continue that tradition of inspiring young people in the environmental field over the years going forward.
Perfect. Thank you very, very much for sharing that, all three of you. Tahira, you have a special question now for everyone.
Yes, I would love to know, what do you see as one of the biggest upcoming energy challenges, and how do you think we can all overcome it together? Miss Sally, I see that smile again. I would love for you to answer first.
All right, thanks, Tahira. We know Trinidad and Tobago, we know, is heavily rooted in the oil and gas industry. But as Philip would have mentioned earlier, and even Salvation, the global trend is actually towards a move to renewables. And I think making that transition in a sustainable manner is one of the major challenges that we have here. And what we really need are innovative thinkers, ideas, and to critically look at and really looking at changing our mindsets, because I think that is one of the bigger challenges there as well. Now, what I'd like to also say is that COVID-19 happened. It propelled us into coming up with game changers, innovative ways of, you know, how do we continue with school? How do we continue with working from home while still, managing, our health? Um, Fortunately, we at the AMA actually were a little bit ahead of the game in this instance. Um, we would have started a work from home initiative last year, actually, so that when COVID-19 hit us, we were ready. Um, we were able to continue working right throughout from March until present, doing what we have been doing all along. And what we've actually seen is we're actually moving towards greater, greener practices. So we're also walking that talk. Um, by our work from home initiative, we've seen a reduction in our carbon footprint for our staff. We've seen energy and financial savings as well at our offices. But it doesn't stop there. We're also looking at different ways to reduce carbon footprint, possibly using electric vehicles in the future, using solar panels at our offices to help supplement in terms of our energy use as well. Um, and this is where I think you, as young people, really would play a critical role, really, to be the innovators, they come up with the creative solutions that help us transition into this cleaner energy future. Listen, I know as young people, you can do that through art, through dance, through song, through video games. I mean, that's where everything is right now. All our young people are into different apps and using video games. Don't just think that it is just about, getting a piece of paper with a degree on it or something. It actually is a lot more than that. And Salvation would have spoken a lot more on that in terms of actually being in the communities and doing those things and helping to change those mindsets. So really and truly, it's going back to you young people and us as the older stewards of, in our country to listen and to help these young people along in terms of not putting down, the ideas that they have, but actually using it, molding it to get us to where we need to go.
Very informative. I love the ideas. I love the ideas. So Mr. Julien, what do you see as one of the biggest upcoming energy challenges, and how do you think we can overcome it together?
Well, it actually is very, very similar to what Sally just shared. The whole energy transition that has to occur for the benefit of the planet is upon us. And we all individually and collectively should be in service of making that a reality. I think what I'd like to add is what is a Trinidad specific issue that makes it even more urgent for Trinidad on the entire planet to be accelerating what we're doing in that space. So the first, let's just focus on one. The big one is, as I mentioned earlier, Trinidad has prided itself on exporting ammonia and methanol. using our natural gas in making the ammonia and methanol. The challenge over the past 10 years is the country has not been finding or producing as much natural gas as we were 15, 20, 25 years ago. So the amount of gas that is available to make the ammonia and methanol has been gradually declining. That impacts, if you think of Trinidad and Tobago as a business, the business revenue or income is going down. And, why NewGen is so, exciting and I guess timely is that it kind of kills two birds with one stone, in that it secures an alternate source of the hydrogen that the natural gas is now shorter on through the use of water and electricity, and it just so happens that that source is carbon free, and is using that source of hydrogen helps in the whole climate change conversation. So, the rest of the world, by and large, is moving into energy transition because it's the right thing to do, right? Climate change is upon us, and we need to be in action to make positive change. In addition to that, Trinidad and Tobago at home, this challenge with our natural gas supply is affecting the bottom line of our country. So the combination of those two, now, as Sally said, it drives the requirement of the innovation to come from the entire citizenry. And I think, you're absolutely right, Sally. It is in the eyes and minds and hearts of the younger generation to propel the sustainable future that is in front of us. We, as you said, as the current stewards, we are laying the groundwork. We are showing the possibilities of what can be, but to drive that in a way that meaningfully impacts the entire country has to start and be sustained by the younger generation, many of whom are represented on this call. So I would say that the last thing I would say, and you just have to look at the other two speakers' experience, do not think that this is beyond your grasp to do. Look, the whole energy sector of Trinidad and Tobago was built by Trinbagonians, right? Groundbreaking work that was the envy of the world. That happened here by our people, and our next generation of extraordinary is waiting to be realized through the minds of our current and younger generation. And you have to believe that, because it is true. And it is up to all of us to be thinking broadly and expansively to realize this bright new future.
I hope our viewers see how amazing these answers are, because I absolutely love them. Now, Mr. Salvation, what do you see as one of the biggest upcoming energy challenges, and how do you think we can overcome them together?
I felt like Miss Sally has been reading my notes because she's been saying all my points so far. I think that the biggest thing for me starting off is mindset. And that could mean so much different things, right? Having a much more open and positive mindset to understanding these things means that we understand what it takes for a shift, especially because of how deep we are in right now, and how much our economy is built around oil and gas and the systems that we have existed. So having a much more open and positive mindset to understand that it's going to require sacrifice from everyone for it to start off. However, on the long run, we are all going to benefit from it, right? That was one of the biggest challenges that I see moving forward. But as Ms. Sally and also the other stakeholders here mentioned, is that we've seen that we can change in a short period of time. We've seen when COVID-19 hit, people had to make changes because it was a matter of either adapt or be left behind kind of mentality people had of approaching how to get out of the situation that we found ourselves in. So I think that understanding that we can, if we all understand the importance of it, And we've done it before. It's not like it's just something that we can't do before. We've done it time and time again when we get threatened with something that is threatening our livelihoods and what we know to be normal. That's why we have something called a new normal, which is not necessarily a new normal, but is our adapting and moving forward and changes that is required. So I think that having a mindset that understands that we have to, first of all, make the sacrifices to change because we've already built systems around what exists right now. And it's going to come gradually from moving away from these things. Yes, there are going to be consequences coming from an abrupt change at once. But if we do it gradually enough, we'll be able to shift from the systems that we have in place right now to a much more sustainable that is built more on sustainability as compared to I guess the current system that we have that aren't as sustainable as we want them to be or aren't sustainable at all to even say, you know. So I think that mindset is a big challenge, and I think that one of the biggest ways to overcome that is by having sessions such as this one here, educating people. If people from last year, they were thinking a lot more proactive than reactive. They understand that, okay, there is a pandemic that is imminent, that's going to happen soon, and we have to put things in place, else we're going to struggle a lot more than we would if we put things in place. If we understand that, guys, we've been talking about climate change, we've been talking about global warming, we've been talking about the environmental consequences that we're facing right now, and we think more proactive. What can we do moving forward to reduce the impact as compared to waiting till it happens before we start to react? I think that if you look at something like war before, where we were thinking as a world at large, I know it's very unrelated, but the principles apply, right? The world at how do we prevent it? What do we do? And you're thinking a lot more proactive in that field. Now, imagine if we apply that same thinking into sustainability. What's going to happen in the future in terms of environmental threats? And then investing as much resources as we have done before. Then, when something like a pandemic, as we see we do with coronavirus that hit us here in COVID, environmental point of view, we would have been in a much more better place because we thought more proactive. Similarly to how Ms. Sally and her office would have been when everybody was scrambling to find setting up working at home, rotation for the workers, equipment to be able to operate at the smaller scale of operation right now. They would have just been breezing through because they've done all that hard work before, and now it's just going to transition into actually applying it on a day-to-day operation for them. So I think that our mindset is one of the biggest things, and I think that we could see mindset being a lot more particular to Trinidad and Tobago when it comes to change. Our mindset is something that we battle with outside of just oil and gas and environmental. It's we're still trying to get a hold of in terms of being able to accept change and be able to be a little more proactive in our approach to, I guess, solutions in moving forward.
Perfect, Salvation. I think I really like what you said there about the mindset. And I think that underlies everything that you, Sally, and Philip would have been speaking about. I mean, we heard about numerous different challenges that all connect. That we looked at the country, we looked at national challenges that are affecting us as an economy, as a country, but from an environmental perspective, which we need to be going cleaner, we need to be going greener, we need to be going better, more efficient, so that we can continue to generate money to run the country and to maintain or to improve the quality of lives that we have right now. I love that the EMA was working remotely before COVID-19 hit. I come from a remote working environment back when I was at De Novo. So when the time came to transition, I was about 2 weeks here at Heroes, and in a week's time, we were able to switch over and go remotely. The team stepped up and did it very well. Not many companies were pro remote work before COVID, so fantastic job, EMA, for doing that. But all those things come back and tie into what Salvation was talking about that motivation. It comes down to the people. It comes down to the people and that individual choice. That's what I'm hearing from all three of you all, because you're working with different groups of people in different areas who are all committed and motivated towards something better for everyone. And I think that's what I'm hearing across from everyone. So I'm going to ask a question based on that. if you all had to give advice to everybody here as to one thing that they can do, that they can actively do, one very simple thing that they can actively do personally to help us get to where we need to go in this new energy future, what would it be? Who wants to go first?
So I can go first, and I would say believe that anything is possible. Don't constrain your thinking. So if there's one thing you're asking for people to do is to dream. So what can I do to make a difference in that space? And you know that, and I think the answer will show up, right? It could be something as simple as making sure in your entire family that all the lights are switched off when they need to be switched off. The air conditioners are switched off. You know, there's all the water faucets are tightened. But I think for me, because I know the other speakers will have their ideas, it's really just to allow yourself to believe that you can make a difference and to reflect on one or two things that you can actually do to make that, to demonstrate that you can make a difference.
Nice. Yeah. Nice, perfect. Salvation, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I was actually trying to Google a particular book that I read in form for to get to quote it properly, but it's about the man who moved the mountain. Understand I would give people is that you have to understand that there are steps that we could take on an individual scale to start off until it builds up to the place where we could get authorities and so on involved, right? Everything could be broken down into what you could do as an individual. And similarly with the man who moved the mountain, he didn't physically move the mountain, but he created a path through the mountain where he's able to, a difficulty that he was facing before in his life, I think it was his wife, being able to move across the mountain was a little longer. But when he created that path, it was a little bit smoother and faster because now they could go straight through it, right? But breaking down things, for example, if you identify a problem of interest for you in your community, in your household, wherever the case is, breaking it down into something that is into simple steps that you could do yourself in the meantime, right? And that's something that I've been trying to push through the climate talk portfolio and curriculum that we've been having in IAMovement is understanding an individualistic approach is the most proactive approach to start off with. Because when you start off by yourself, you're gonna have to start doing whatever you can in your own means, and then from there you can build and build and build and build until you're able to have a team or have a group of people that can help you achieve your goal with you, right? And that could apply to anything in life, not just environmental issues. Breaking it down into simple steps that you can have an individualistic approach to it and start off as an individual and build up from there, because from that taking one step to two to four to eight, eventually you're gonna get into the thousand steps that you wanted to start off with in the beginning that you could not do by yourself. And when you look back at it, you could see that through going through step by step by step by step, you would learn a lot more and you are able to understand a lot more where if you're in a position where you have to pass on this to other people, you have a lot more understanding and a lot more experience to be able to pass it on. So my advice would be whatever problem that you're facing, try and break it down into simple steps that you could take on your own individually until you're able to get help from a team or a collective or a bigger scale of collective effort that can be able to help you find a solution to that problem.
Beautiful, beautiful. Tying in very nicely to Philip's point as well. Sally, what about you?
All right. I agree with Philip. We need to dream. I also agree with Salvation that it takes one step at a time. And one of the key things I've seen us doing that is actually composting your organics at home. We're recycling. We're using the iCare bins, which is available. Anybody going anywhere throughout the country will be able to see these iCare bins. So it's something you start at home. Composting your organics instead of throwing it in the garbage that ends up in our landfills. And then you actually use that in your home gardens. You would now be growing actually organic crops for your own use. And I could give you a personal story. We have a garden at home. It's not a huge garden. We have been producing okras and I've been able to give okras out to a number of people, and those are organically grown okras. it actually fosters now us eating healthier because you're not getting in all these different chemicals and whatnot into your body. So you start small, you start individually, and as Salvation said, it grows from there.
Beautiful. Excellent, excellent advice inside there. I think everyone will can do that. I'm gonna, I think Tahira, I'm gonna toss this to you, that you take Sally's advice on the composting and the home gardening. I'll do it too, and we'll see who can grow more okras before the end of the year. And then we compare.
I'll win. I'll win.
Perfect. So to change things up a little bit, we are the Heroes Foundation after all. You all have been, in my opinion, really heroic in your stories, being here, giving of your time and your talents and your insights and experience. So I want to know, for each of you, what makes a hero? Philip, do you want to take us first? What makes a hero for you?
So I like to look at it from the saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? So for me, a hero is in the eye of a beholder. So in other words, if there's something that you do, or Sally does, Sally or Salvation does, that is selfless in its nature, and it inspires me to do the same for the greater good, then you are my hero. It's your own individual acts of, as we say, altruism, or acts of selflessness in service of the greater good, which could be in service of country, and coming in it from a space where you're not looking for any conscious material gain or benefit to yourself. For me, that makes you my hero, because that is now inspiring me to be in action to do the same. So to me, that's what it means to be a hero.
Okay. Nice, nice. Salvation, what about you? For you, what makes a hero?
For me, a hero, what makes a hero is something that is dynamic as you move through life and so on, and you move forward. For example, what was a hero to me back in primary school was the forage gardeners in the yard. And those were heroes because every time they harvest, they will crops and so on, or crows and so on in the garden. I was like, wow, this is amazing. Those were like heroes in that regard. And then moving into secondary school now, where I understood my understanding of environmental science was broadened up a little bit. And my heroes were at that time people who did um, planting and activities as well as community cleanups and so on. Those were my heroes at that particular time. And then moving into university now, I would have had a much more introspective approach to it, where I understood that a hero is not necessarily a statue of a big thing, but a hero is simply somebody who's been able to effect positive change in a particular field. And from there, I could see that that is common throughout all these heroes from primary into secondary into universities. There was a solution that they provided in a particular area, or there was an advancement of knowledge that they provided in a particular field. That to me was like it was about a new awareness, and I felt like I was inspired by what they did. That I felt like I could also do this thing on my own. I didn't feel like, well, it's because they had superpowers or it's because they were not human beings. But I look at them as people just like myself that have been able to do something that I consider to be great. And to me, that's what I consider what makes up a hero. It doesn't necessarily require me to be able to fly. But if it is that is somebody who has done something that has been able to inspire me, and I feel like this person is just like me, a human being just like me, and has been able to do this thing that I consider to be great. And I can do it as well because I could see that they've been able to inspire me, then I consider that person to be a hero. So in that sense, I guess that would be my definition of what makes a hero.
Nice. And Sally, what about you? What makes a hero for you?
For me, it is not the traditional definition of a hero that people may think of as somebody who perform amazing feats or won the Nobel Prize, or even some of the famous singers or actors or actresses we hear of. It really is a person who would help shape and define someone's life, and who would exude a certain strength and courage in the face of adversity especially in the face of adversity. Because we all need that inspirators to us to help guide us on this journey that we call life.
Perfect. Excellent.
So, piggybacking off of that question, I would like to know, starting with Mr. Comic Book Lover himself, who is one of your heroes and why?
I already showed my hand earlier by freely admitting that the late and great Stan Lee, the co-creator Marvel Comics, is one of my heroes. But I to bring it closer to home, I mean, for all my life, my parents have been my heroes, just for their own sacrifices and how they raised my brother and I. And I think just to be most relevant to the conversation today, I can proudly say that my dad is one of my heroes. And I think the reason for that is I had the unique privilege of growing up with him as my dad. Breakfast, lunch, dinner with him. And he was always just dad. And as I grew up, I realized how much my dad was able to just quietly take on, really in service of country, and and seeing also how, Sally, you said it, the way he shaped people's lives in the educational world as well, because he was a professor at the University of West Indies, and just hearing his former students would come up and say what a great teacher he was, and how much he inspired them. It really, for me, created absolute reality that my dad was not only a hero to me, but he was a hero to so many other people, not only in the education system, but in the energy sector, and that I thought was admirable. And using my own definition, it inspired me to try and do the same.
Nice.
That was nice. I love how you kept that. Like, I've always heard children say, "Who's your hero?" and they would say, "My mom or my dad." I love how you kept that with you. Okay, so Sally, I would like to hear who's one of your heroes and why.
Well, going along with actually similar to Lawrence, my mom actually is my hero, and I'll tell you why. She was a person who grew up without a lot of love or people to encourage her in terms of building her self-esteem. And that was something she never wanted for her children. And she always encouraged me and my siblings to strive for whatever we wanted in our life and never give up. No matter if you thought you failed, do not give up. If you think you hit your head into a concrete wall and you can't go further, you can't, move, find a way around it. There's always a way either on top or you go around it. Um, she taught me the art of appreciating the things that I worked hard to achieve. And rather than if it is somebody handed you, and I'm sure you all would have heard the saying, handed with a silver spoon. Nothing I have was handed to me with a silver spoon, and which is why I appreciate where I am and how I got here today. Um, my mother also didn't attend school past primary school, and which made it even more. She would sit with us while we were doing our work. She may not have known the work or even how to help us to do a math problem. Math was never her strong forte, but she will sit with us. Throughout the night, I remember sitting there doing work during A levels, and she would be up with me. And that actually helped a lot in terms of motivating me to go on. Today, um, all her children are independent individuals. She taught us that world possessions could be lost, but that education belongs only to you and no one could take it away from you. And that has actually helped me in terms of growing up as a child, going through my primary, my secondary school, and to help me to where I am today. We face challenges every day, thankfully, she's still here with me, and she's still a sounding board that I rely on quite a lot. So my mom actually is my hero.
All your stories have been so touching. I'm fangirling you. All of my heroes right now. So I would like to know, Mr. Salvation, who's one of your heroes and why?
I guess I'm allowed to have multiple heroes again, right? I think at this point you'll realize that I'm trying to do as much as I can. I'll be as much as I can at the same time. I have multiple heroes. The first being my father. My father from a very early stage. My father grew up in a house. He grew up in Nigeria as well, where things were very hard, and he had to decide either to stay in his father's house in a very wealthy house that you're going to be taken care of, you're going to have inheritance and so on, or go to school. Because my grandfather told him, if you go to school, you're not going to be helping in the farms and so on. So then how important are you to the household if you go to school? And he was faced with a very difficult choice, and he ended up going to school. But it's so planned out that he had to come back eventually to take care of the entire family after he went to school where they were fighting him down to go. So, and my father instilled this at a very early stage in my life, a value in me where with life, you can't do it, right? Once you're alive, you could lose everything today and build it back up tomorrow. And that kind of helped me to shape what I define as a hero, being somebody who does something extraordinary, but still has that relatability element to them. So they could do something heroic or whatever, a very outstanding performance or whatever you consider it to be. And then that person still having that relatability element where you feel like you can also do it. And that comes from inspiration. So my dad being my very first hero. And then moving on into like careers and professions and so on. My director right now was actually one of my heroes during university, Mr. Jonathan Barker. He's an engineer, Jonathan Barker, where I met him the first time in my first year in university. And from him, I would have understood how impactful like certain fields are and how direct, especially in this organization, how hands-on we are with the approach. And to me, that was one of the biggest takeaways in universities where you're learning a lot of theoretical things and things that you're always asking, when am I going to use this Pythagoras theorem? When am I going to use this quadratics in real life? And then now meeting people who are in the actual field and doing the actual application and bringing about actual change and actual results in people's life. And I consider that to be very heroic because they may have been able to save somebody's house from being flooded. And that person's house being flooded will have changed the entire trajectory of their life. And by them doing that now, intervening in that regard, they've been able to, I guess, have a heroic act that they could be considered a hero in that sense. So my director is one of my heroes in the professional field. And then because I'm a very, I like football, I like sports, one of my heroes is Frank Lampard, who's the coach of the football team, Chelsea Football Club. And Frank Lampard implements this youthful approach to his system and his approach to coaching. So I guess that's the element that we could take away from heroes as well, having that youthful approach of continuity, because as somebody spends time, as somebody gets older and somebody gets older into something, there needs to be that youthful rejuvenation in that career or in that field that will be able to carry the baton, collect it, pass it on to them, collect it, and be able to continue the marathon because being a hero, I think, is something more long-term than an instant or short-term thing or, I guess, concept. So having that continuity, I guess that's a way to consider Frank Lampard being a hero in that sense. So my dad being my first hero, my director being my professional hero, and then I guess in football, Frank Lampard being my hero. Oh, also because Chelsea won Champions League in 2012 with Frank Lampard being the captain.
Love the information. These have been so touching and so informative for me. I love this whole thing. So as we wrap up, I have one more question. Talking about heroes, what advice do you think would be useful for the young heroes watching? Miss Sally.
I would say to you and to all our young viewers there, set your goals. Be open to change, as I strongly believe that we need to leave room for God to direct us. And there's a Proverbs, a saying from Proverbs, and I'll put it in simpler terms, and I'm sure you would have heard this already. Write your plans in pencil and give the God the eraser. Engage in continuous learning, as this is now at your fingertips. You define who you want to be and what you want to do. I always tell my 12-year-old, Tahira, yes, I do have a 12-year-old daughter. You can be and do anything you set your mind to. Work hard, work consistently, and work honestly. Have faith that God will always lead you to where you need to be. And of course, enjoy your journey getting there.
Once again, very touching and informative. I would like to hear from Mr. Salvation next.
What I would say is, I guess, speaking from my own experience, where I would have done my first 2 years in secondary school in El Dorado East Secondary School, which at that time was Elder Blue, and that would have been like at the peak of the violence and so on, with like schools and so on. But what that experience taught me is that even in the middle of chaos, once you have a plan, as Ms. Ali mentioned, once you have an understanding of what you're trying to achieve, or even if you don't have that, but once you have that focus and that discipline to be able to settle down yourself, you can be able to figure out a direction. Because to me, one of the advice I would like to leave with young people here, because I know that a lot of us here in secondary schools, is that be able to plan what you want to do. You may not figure out exactly what you want to do, but if you have a plan, that plan will give you a direction. And in that direction, you can figure out, okay, this is for me and this is not for me in that plan. And by so doing, that plan has helped you to be able to, even if it does not lead directly in you being able to achieve your goal, but it's been able to put you on track to achieve your goal, right? So I think having a plan is very important. I think writing down your plans are also important, because when you write down something, as Ms. Ali had highlighted, the importance of writing it down, you're able to remember, you're able to meditate with it. I think praying is very important. Praying helps you get guidance. When you pray from divine, having that divine guidance is very important, because there are times where, humanly speaking, you need a burst of wisdom, you need some kind of inspiration somewhere. And when you pray, out of nowhere, that inspiration could come and you'll be able to get clarity in your direction. And so doing, you'll be able to achieve your goals. So I think planning, writing down your plan, and then praying, and from there, enjoy the ride, as also was highlighted by Ms. Sally. I think it's important to also enjoy the ride, because that's, to me, the process is more like, is where I get more fulfillment from, as compared to the end product. The end product is nice and it's good, but the hardship of the process, finding a difficulty, meeting a crossroads, being able to decide and having a solution and overcoming is what I enjoy more than the actual finished product. Yeah?
Thank you both for those amazing answers. Once again, I would like to hear from Mr. Julien now.
I mean, those the advice from my two fellow speakers is extraordinary, and I think, you know, if they've given the structure as to how to make things real, I think the only thing I could add is sometimes it's hard in your life circumstance to think beyond a certain way of thinking. So my offer would be to be limitless in your thinking, in your doing, and in your being. As cliche as it sounds, anything and everything is possible once you choose to believe. And whether you get that access to the source through praying or through your own meditations, or just taking the time, just allow yourself to be limitless in your thinking, in your doing, and in your being, and sit back and enjoy the ride.
Thank you all for those amazing answers. So for the viewers, please believe, have fun, have hope in yourself, have faith and trust in your process.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you all very much for sharing. Thank you all for being a part of this evening session. Tahira, you were a fantastic co-host. Any bits of advice that you'd like to leave the audience with before we wrap up?
The only thing I would have to say that I haven't heard yet is, not everybody's process is different. If somebody succeeds at your age, that doesn't mean that you have to succeed at your age. Please trust in your process. Trust in yourself. Have faith, because your time will come soon.
Perfect. Thank you very, very much for that, Tahira. Sally, Salvation, Philip, thank you so very much for joining us today, for sharing your insights, your advice, your experience, and really, really excited about what each of you all are doing about creating this new energy future in Trinidad and Tobago, actually getting involved, getting down and dirty, and putting in the work to build this cleaner, greener future. On the note of Philip's Heroes Foundation was really, really privileged to do a comic book about the life of Professor Ken Julian. It's called Powered Up, the Ken Julian story. There was a reading of it done a few months ago with Read to Me. So everyone can just check out the social media page and catch Philip and his daughter reading the story about his father's early years as he moved towards developing this Point Lisas industrial estate. The EMA, like Sally said, is doing a fantastic job with iCare. So everyone, please go check out the iCare page, check out the EMA page, get more information about how we can all actively participate in recycling. And of course, IAMovement is